So yesterday was also a memorial event, kind of a historic occasion. Yesterday, July 27th, was the 60th anniversary of the armistice of the Korean War. So the Korean War went from 2010, that's last year, went from 1950 to 1953. And the armistice was signed in 1953, so that's 60 years ago yesterday. So I want to read some of the proclamations and declarations that were made about the Korean War. This is from the President. Today, America pauses to observe the 60th anniversary of the end of the Korean War, a conflict that defined a generation and decided the fate of a nation. We remember the troops who hit the beaches when communist forces were pressing south, who pushed back and fought their way north through hard mountains and bitter cold. We remember ordinary men and women who showed extraordinary courage through 3 long years of war, fighting far from home to defend a country they never knew and a people they never met. Later on he says, in 6 decades, the Republic of Korea has become one of the world's largest economies and one of America's closest allies. Together, we have built a partnership that remains a bedrock of stability throughout the Pacific. That legacy belongs to the service members who fought for freedom 60 years ago and the men and women who preserve it today. So that's our President Barack Obama offered that yesterday. And then also yesterday from Senator Ted Cruz, on the 60th anniversary of the armistice, ending the Korean War, we thank all Americans who served and pray all Koreans will one day know freedom. So we know from Unification tradition, and our church began in Korea, and has the roots in Korea, the providential significance that nation had. And in fact, in that war, 60 years ago, 16 nations from around the world participated with the United Nations to defend the South against the North Communist invasion and attack. Kind of a historic event in human history to have so many different countries participating and coming together to support a single nation. Very significant in history, and also, of course, we know for God's providence that God has many hopes for Korea, and our founder, Father Moon, has always been praying and desperate to see the reunification of North and South Korea. So I really appreciate the Senator Ted Cruz, again, praying for the reunification and the freedom of all people, because we know the people in the North are suffering, actually, in a very difficult circumstance. So I think it's important, as unificationists, to remember our motherland, the fatherland of Korea, and this is a very important and significant anniversary. So, we welcome our new member. We remember our history, right, from Korea. Well, what other thing is happening today? Today is a big day, right?
Parents' Day.
National Parents' Day! So happy National Parents Day, everybody! Now, I think we need to get something, Hallmark still needs to get on board, right? So, because I called up my mom and dad this morning, and she says, I said, Happy National Parents Day! And they said, is that some kind of church holiday or something? No! President Clinton, 19 years ago, President Clinton, Bill Clinton, signed the bill making it National Parents Day. It was a bipartisan effort. Both parties came together, and he signed the bill in 1994, proclaiming that the 4th Sunday of every July would be National Parents Day, a time when we recognize our parents and the role that parents have. So I thought, well, this is a good chance for us to talk about parents, because also even in our own tradition, parents are at the core of the universe. So here's some scripture readings. This is from the book of Ephesians. Paul writes, "Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment with a promise, that it may go well with you and that you may enjoy long life on earth. So that commandment, if you obey your parents, your father and mother, then the Bible says, in the Ten Commandments, it even promises, if you're obedient to your father and mother, then it will go well for you. You will be blessed in your life. And you will have enjoy a long life on earth. So, let's hear some from Father Moon's words. This is from the peace message on God's ideal family and the kingdom of the peaceful, unified, ideal world. So, Father Moon says, I invite you to enter into a transcendent state and prayerfully ask God, what is the center of the universe? The answer that you hear will undoubtedly be the parent-child relationship. Nothing is more important or more precious than the relationship between parent and child. This is because it defines the fundamental relationship between God the Creator and human beings. So we teach that parental love is the highest form of love. It's actually the first place that we begin to taste and understand God's love in the world is through through our experience with our parents. And we know in the ideal, when we talk about the principle of creation, God's original plan, that as children would experience God first through their parents. They would even created in the womb, already God's love, His presence there as they're growing. And when they're born, their experience of God first comes through the parents. Interesting, even psychology supports that children see their parents as God. And God designed it that way. God designed it so that as children we would be able to look at our parents, see and experience God's love, know God's love, and then as we grew and developed and matured, we would see that, God is not just my parents, but expands in we would cultivate our own relationship and experience with God. This is the design of things. It's a beautiful design, except for the fall. The challenge is that we look at our parents and that's not really what we experience. We don't necessarily experience God's love. No matter how hard our parents try, we know that there's been something lacking. And I was thinking about this and thinking, if you think about the perspective that young people go through, there's kind of stages that evolve more because we're living in this fallen world, not really accomplishing or living according to that ideal. So, like I said, all children, when they're first born initially, their parents represent perfect love. The omniscient, all-knowing parent, who knows the best. Whatever mom or dad says, that's it. That must be the right answer. And you're amazed at how wise they are, and they have the answers to all your questions, and they take care of you. They keep you happy and comfortable and warm. And we go through that the very beginning stage. And that's actually God's design. It should be that way. Unfortunately, at some point in our lives, we recognize that, wait a minute, Mom and Dad don't know everything. Whoa, they're not omniscient. They don't, have all power to make everything better. Once upon a time they just had to kiss my alley and things were better, right? But now, wait a minute, that kiss isn't enough. I need some Band-Aids here. So it's interesting developmental stage when at some point we realize that our parents are people. Well, they actually have friends. They do things outside of taking care of me. Their whole life is not just taking care of me. They have friends. And actually, they do stuff with other people. Maybe they go to work. They actually have a whole world, of people, co-workers and stuff. Wow! And suddenly, you start seeing your parents, as people. Wow! They're not omniscient anymore. And then you start, you're challenging them more and more. And even psychologists mark these developmental stages. The beginning stage of trust, where we experience trust and support and nurturing from our parents. But then we get older and we start to develop our own identity, distinct from our parents. And that's healthy, and it's natural. But of course, you make it to the teenage years, and then the parents, not only are they just people that don't know everything, but a lot of times they're people who don't know anything, right? As a teenager, it's like you become suddenly so smart, and you want to do all these things. And who are the parents? The parents are your prison wardens. They keep you from doing all the things that you want to do. It's like, I want to do this, and I want to do that. And your parents, I know better. No, that's a bad idea. That's a bad... And you're just so frustrated as a teenager. It's like, oh, they're just keeping me in prison here. I can't wait till I get out of the house. I can't wait till I get out and get free and can do what I want. That's a natural stage. We're going through this development. Interesting. Once we get out of the home and we're actually living life, paying bills, dealing with all the challenges of the world, then suddenly you look back and you go, wow. So you're calling up mom or dad and say, there's something wrong with my sink. What should I do? And suddenly your parents became so much smarter. It's like, wow, you became so smart in the last few years. When we start to realize, wow, our parents know a lot. Our parents are actually can't help us. And so we develop a different kind of relationship, where they are still there supporting. A good thing, moms and dads always, oh, did you get enough to eat? You come and visit. They're always still have that parenting. But when you're out of the house, you're a lot more appreciative. Oh yeah, boy, I go back to mom's and dad's so I get a good meal. Remember in college, I bring all my laundry home so I can get it washed. So that's an interesting stage when we reach adulthood. But the real pinnacle of understanding our parents is ultimately when we become parents ourselves. There's this interesting expression, teenage daughters are revenge for the grandmother. When you become a parent and have your own teenager, and then your grandparents are looking at you and go, oh yeah, I remember you. I remember when you were just like that, making me pull all my hair out, driving me crazy. So actually, when we become parents ourselves and realize, whoa, this is a job. This is a huge job. The kind of investment, the lack of sleep, that parents make when you're a parent and you realize, my parents did this for me. My parents invested this kind of effort in me. Then also our perspective changes again, because we can look back and appreciate what even more fully what our parents have done for us and how much we have to be grateful for, truly grateful for. So I want this morning to, I've asked a couple of people to share some testimonies. It's easy for us to look back on our experiences as children, on our parents. And I went through this exercise myself, and I was thinking, well, okay, for Parents' Day, I should think of some of the good things. And this is actually an exercise I'm going to ask all of you to do. I'm going to have a couple people share testimony, but I want all of you to think, and identify a positive memory of your parents. And think of something that remains important to you today that you did with them or that they did for you. Something in your life. When I first started doing this, the first thing I thought of was I could make a long list of my complaints. Of, well, they weren't there for this, and I missed them for that, and this. It's very easy for us to do that, right? To think of all the things that we were missing, the things that we wish our parents had done for us, the things that were lacking. And, that's so easy for us to fall into that trap of only thinking about what's wrong and what's missing and forget what was good and the beneficial. And we know, even from the principle, what we have give and take with, what we think about, what we're interacting with, that generates energy. So many of us, have to deal with resentments that we have towards our parents. But how are we going to heal that? It's not by thinking and complaining about those things. It's by remembering the strengths, recognizing, acknowledging the things that our parents did for us. Imperfect as they were, the many traumas that I have because of my parents. In spite of all that, recognize and find and have give and take with those amazing things that our parents did for us. And by having give and take with that, thinking about that, reflecting on that, what happens? There's healing that happens in our own lives. Because we know our parents weren't perfect. And all parents have the desire to do well. And we have varying capacities to care for children. Especially when we became parents, we realized how difficult and how challenging it was. So I encourage you, this is actually going to be homework. I'm going to ask you to share in a little bit with your neighbor. But I encourage you to even think and reflect on this National Parents Day. And if you have the opportunity, give your parents a call. And affirm that relationship. Even if it's in your own mind and in prayer with the Heavenly Parent. The value that our parents have given us. So I'm really grateful. I sent out the request for testimonies, right? And I really appreciate the people who volunteered. I know you should have been volunteering too. But anyway, we really only have time for two. So I want to invite both Hiromi Hurtado and Monty Johnson to both come up and ask them to share their testimony. Please welcome them. We'll have Hiromi share first, and then Monty.
Make me nervous standing.
There you go. Just stand next to me.
Okay. Okay. I appreciate the Pastor Joe to give me this opportunity to reflect my parents and for the National Parent Day. When am I reflecting my parents? Like, I really feel that what I'm standing here is thanks to my parents' support, all about all. And my parents were in the early 70s right now, and my father is retired when he reached the 60, and he's been active for not the Unification church, but it's like for community type of volunteer work, and he's actually taking an English conversation class even once a week, and so he's pretty active outside too. And when I grew up as oldest daughter in the family, and my father is the oldest in the family, so oldest son in Japanese culture, in traditional take care of the parents. And I grew up with those kind of environment. I lived with the grandparents and actually great-grandmother who reached about 96 years old, and auntie and uncle until they married. And so I kind of grew up in a big family, also like 3 generations, 4th generation. So it's when so that probably brought me up like, those I don't know, relationship is. And then, so my father, when I reflecting, he was very supportive for me and throughout my, everything like what I like to do, and, like a choice of sports, for example. I used to play sports quite a lot, and this choice of school and education was probably the more things that I feel very supportive from my father. And he showed some example. He was a kind of like a researcher for the electricity company, another company like institute, and he always showed hard work kind of feel. And the mother, on the other hand, she had been a housewife, and she took us some part-time, but it's basically she was a housewife and support all the family and pretty sociable compared to the father. And the great thing about mother was that she took care of my grandmother for father's side, and she became Alzheimer's disease, and when she was reached very early age, like 60s, that times nobody kind of knew what the Alzheimer's disease was. So it's kind of going through the stage that she has to be a caregiver almost 24/7, and by looking her dedications, like double my, and I'm grateful that she did. She did not give up. She, there was a law, and also my parents were at the time it was quite common for the arranged marriage, but she took those roles as married to the oldest son. So she knew those in-laws has to take care of, and she did well. And actually, her testimony was taking care of those grandmother. Was when last year I went visit my parents, and she showed me the book about like a collection of testimony who did how take care of the wife, the in-laws or own mother or father who became seniority, and I'm very proud of those my parents, and so those kind of memory from my childhood, and then so I felt really supported for what I did, except the decisions I joined the Unification Church. So that the time was like I joined when I was before reaching the first freshman for the college, and so they made my parents worry so much because they don't know and too much about Unification Church. And that time was lots of media influence, and parents kind of brainwash for the children. So that's the only time that I felt very against their parents' will. I mean, but still, they allowed me to. My parents allowed me to attend the Sunday service, and I had a chance to go to Korea as a student, and even after finishing the college. So, and then allowed me to come to United States, and I was undercover, like I said, not in a Unification Church, but it's like kind of like the university I attended was the branch, so they believe that I attend those workshops, not for the 40-day workshop, and before the blessing, and then so they were very against about the blessing. Honestly, I was blessed in '95, and lucky I could do it, but but I introduced Willie, and he my parents accept and then our marriage, and which was grateful, and actually father came for after blessing the year later for wedding I did for the at the wedding at the Catholic Church, and then my father came, and then my mother couldn't because she was taking care of her grandmother, as I mentioned before. But so like Pastor Charles was mentioning, so after myself become a mother, I kind of reflecting how hard it was parenting, and then and actually last week I was inspired my daughter standing here, and that kind of motivated me to do today. So parenting is very hard, but paying off after long run. So I hope my parents felt the same way, even some rejections they felt by me coming here, but at one point, one thing I kind of very clearly remember, I went through lots of difficult for the marriage life and hardship, as you probably imagine. And my father on the phone said, "But did you just say you married for the world peace?" And then, yeah, that's right. I acknowledge it. Kind of reflect myself again. That's a decision I made, and then I asked my parents for the permissions because I want to pursue for the world peace. And here I am. And then I again appreciate for everybody that is listening my testimony. And again, I keep contacting my parents on and on, like a weekly phone call. And I wish I could be close enough because they're reaching the late stage of their life. And then although they have more grandchildren, they have 9 total. But especially for my children, didn't have much chance to meet them and spend time with them as much as I wish to be. So, but thank you so much.
So,
It's pretty loud. Yeah.
my name's Monty, and I mainly want to just talk about my dad, I guess, today. He passed into spirit world about a couple weeks ago on July 6th, and we're going to have the ceremony for him next weekend, and just going to review his life maybe a little bit, I hadn't even prepared to talk about my mom. I've been having my dad on my mind so much now. I'll have to wait for Mother's Day to talk about Father. So he was 91 years old, born in 1922 in Salt Lake City. And he was baptized into the Mormon Church. And things I think, went well for the first 6 or so years, but then his mother became alienated from the church because her husband, became an alcoholic, and that led to difficulties in the life in my dad's family. He and his 2 other brothers kind of had to work together with the mom. He was sort of like raised sort of by a single mom, and of course during hard times in our history. The 3 brothers came of age about at the time of the Second World War. The oldest brother went into the Air Force. The middle brother went into the Army, and my dad enlisted in the Marines. They all, served. Dad didn't actually make it into combat. He fortunately for me, he sustained an injury. He was working as a platoon sergeant in the Marines, which is kind of a tough position. And anyway, he sustained an injury to his knee just before they were going to ship out to Iwo Jima. So otherwise, I would have no dad to be there. After the war, he finished his undergraduate degree at University of Utah, majoring in English. I think, ultimately he went into education, and I don't know if that was in his mind at the time then or not. The Korean War came; they called him back into duty. He taught. He worked as a trainer at Camp Pendleton for the duration of the Korean War, so we didn't have to do any active duty there. And then he went into education, eventually got his doctorate degree in educational psychology, and worked at Long Beach Community College. Then in his late 80s, he came down with Alzheimer's. And so for the last 3 years, he's been up here, and I've been caring for him. So, anyway, we're looking forward to our good family reunion this next weekend. I didn't realize I was going to get so choked up about this. So, anyway, maybe I'll just call it quits there, and thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you so much again, both Romy and Monty, for sharing. So now, please pair off and turn to your neighbor, and please, just for a few minutes, identify one of the positive memories from your parents. Share with your neighbors something about your parents, something that's important and significant to you. And if need be, go ahead and make a group of 3, but share. Well, thank you so much. I hope you had some chance for good sharing. I don't know, in our group it was so easy to talk about I had to really work hard not to work on the buts and the complaints and it was good, but this happened. No. Let's, and I encourage you to use that as an exercise, even today, as you reflect about, our parents, that you even make a list, write something down in your journal or your diary, to acknowledge that and really appreciate what we've inherited especially the good things that we've inherited from our parents. So that's your homework, okay? If you don't mind me assigning you some homework. I want to talk, though, and now just in the second half. There's one from we're the perspective of children towards our parents. But then there's also the perspective of now we're becoming parents, right? Parents, and the challenge in those who are in the future becoming parents. So I want just to briefly hit on some of the values of parenthood, especially from a unificationist perspective. We know that the key to our life is love, that everything comes from love, and the family is a school of love where we learn and experience all the different dimensions of love. Especially when we're in the position of parents, it's the opportunity for God to work powerfully through us to be that nurturing presence in our children's lives. There's an opportunity there for us to experience God's love and express God's love in a profound new way that we can't express any other way. Now, that experience and that practice of parental love, we encourage ourselves to do that even when we aren't parents, right? Because we want to have a parental heart even to anyone that we're in a position to care for. If we're in a teaching role, we should have a parental heart as a teacher towards students. And even as we're young and growing up, we want to cultivate and learn more and more. How can I have that kind of unconditional giving heart that parental love and God's love exemplifies? So in addition to love, though, there's also the whole life, living for the sake of others, making a difference in someone's life. There's nobody's life that you're going to make a greater difference in than your children. No one. And we invest in many people, but there's no one that we will have such a profound impact for our children. Of course, that's also a little bit scary as parents, but it's true and it's real. Also, lineage is understanding that what we're passing on to our children is also tradition and education. The experience and even when we were reflecting about our parents, we want to be those kind of people also for our children, creating those kind of positive memories and experiences. And finally, at the core of the divine principle is the reason God created was for the purpose of joy. God wanted to experience joy through a parent-child loving relationship with the children, us as the children. So for us, God experienced even more joy from us when He sees the relationship we have with our children, parent-child relationships. It's kind of God says, now you understand a little bit about how I feel towards you. And through that reflecting God's heart and God's nature, we can bring amazing things happening in the world, in our environment. So, in thinking about parenting is such a challenge. And there's a whole lot that we could do and think about in terms of how can we grow and improve our parenting skills. So here's a quick list. Okay? Number one, we need to show to our children husband-wife love. We need to love our spouse. And the children need to see and understand and experience the love between a husband and wife. They learn from that. So we need to make that investment and effort so that our children know and experience that and see that. Also, we need to let our children know that we love them. We kind of take it for granted. It's like, well, of course I love them. I sacrifice, I do all this, I pay their bills, I do this, I got food for them. Of course I love them. Right? Well, sometimes we need to express it in a little bit more gentle, a loving way, and just that genuine expression of, you know how much I care about you. I love you. Of course, we do it through our actions, and already we're expressing it. But sometimes we just need to make sure that our children understand that we really love them and how much they mean to us. Also, when we think about our children, we think a lot about how do we help them know about God. Like I said before, they're first going to see God and experience God through when they look at us. We have to make some kind of extra effort to help them overcome the hurdles that that their experience with us may have in them being able to experience God. Because honestly, sometimes, my image or my experience with my parents get in the way of me being able to experience the genuine love of God. So when we're, as parents, we have the challenge of realizing, well, I was the first image that, my child had of God. That means I probably need to make some investment to let them know that, yeah, I love you completely, but God loves you so much more than I possibly can, and help cultivate that. And of course, we best do that through our own relationship with God. So praying together, studying together, and even just talking to them naturally about our Heavenly Parent. So it becomes genuine, not, okay, now I'm going to give you your Sunday school lesson. But all the natural opportunities that come, and just in the course of life, to share about your experience and your relationship with God as our Heavenly Parent. Then talking to God about our children. In our prayers, in our reflections, the source that we're going to get to be able to care for our children, it's our Heavenly Parent. So husband and wife is a team, but ultimately the coach that we have is God, our Heavenly Parent. So even our prayer and our study, seeking always, Heavenly Father, Heavenly Parent, please help me. I want my child to know you, to experience you. Please give me the words, the insight. Please help my child as they're going through the challenges at school or in their environment. And I encourage you, invest deeply in prayer for your children, for the sake of your children. If we think about it, we're putting our children in a very dangerous and very scary world. The world that we send our children out to, it's like Jesus said about it, it's like I'm sending lambs out among the wolves. We're sending our children into an environment that wants to eat them up, that wants to kill them spiritually. So we need to pray desperately for our children and invest in care so that God and the Heavenly Spirit world and our ancestors and all the good energy that we can generate can be with our children and protect our children. And that's our investment, a very important spiritual investment that we make in our children. Be sure we include our children when we're praying for world peace, and we're praying for this condition, and we're praying for that and that, all those big things. Make sure we're always praying deeply and specifically for our children, talking to God about our children. And then we need to model the behavior that we want our children to learn. There's I can't hear what you're saying because of what I see you doing. They really learn what we do, regardless of what we say and how we might talk and tell them that they should do this. If they don't see it, then it doesn't have strength. So we need to work ourselves, modeling the behavior, modeling what we want them to learn, what we want them to show them. And finally, we need to make sure we enjoy our kids. Make good memories. Make memories that are, we have the realization, our daughter's looking to go to Korea, possibly. She's applied for a scholarship to go. And we're thinking, wow, she's going to be gone for a while. And it's like, whoa, she may be gone in just a couple of months. And so it's like, oh, okay, well, we're going to start eating dinner together a little bit more. Let's play, we need a game night. We need to make some more memories together because soon we won't be having that time, that opportunity. So I encourage you and your families, make sure you're making memories, making good experiences, the vacation trips, the good memories and experiences that you have as a family, the fun times that you have together. So that those are memories that we take with us our whole life. If you can think back in your life, all the as parents, the things that you remember, the memorable experiences. So let's invest as parents in making memorable experiences for our children. Sometimes those memorable experiences, in our family are, the car broke down on the road and we had to deal with all this stuff. It was kind of wouldn't have thought of it as a positive one, kind of a scary one and kind of an exciting one. But because we were all doing it together and trying to solve a problem together, and we worked together and we could look back on it and laugh about it, and investing in those kinds of experiences as a family. So let me close with these words from Father Moon. The most precious responsibility of parents is not only to rear their children externally, but also to offer them life elements of true love that can perfect their spirituality. This is why the family is so valuable. Please join me in prayer. Good morning, Heavenly Parent. We are so grateful when we think about your presence in our lives and the way that you've been working. And today, along with every day, we want to remember and reflect on the ways that you work through our physical parents to enable us to grow, to enable us to experience you more completely. We know that our parents fell short in many areas, but it's so amazing what they were able to do and how we were able to grow in spite of those difficulties and challenges. So I pray that as your sons and daughters, that we can truly be the people that can lift up our parents, truly acknowledge the value there, and bring a brighter spiritual environment, hope and energy around our relationship with our parents, and also, Heavenly Parent, our relationship with our children and the future. We thank you so much for your love, the example of the true heavenly parental love that we have access to every single day. We pray that through our own searching, our study, our prayer, and our time with you, you can continue to educate us, raise us up, that we can fulfill that potential that you've given us to be your representatives on earth. So as your sons and daughters, as blessed central families, we offer up this prayer and gratefully come before you. And I offer this in the name of the Watteville, the blessed central family. Amen and Amen. Okay, let's take a couple of minutes and please share with your neighbor any of these ideas or thoughts. If you didn't get to finish your conversation about your parents, ideas about the value of parenthood or heavenly parenting. Thank you.